We don't have a lot of time, so I'll just explain a little context. My name is Aldo, Lauria, Santiago. I'm a professor at Rutgers University. My proposal for this panel, with some people who are not here now, but we have at least 2 people who committed to thinking out loud about this and try to get it started besides myself. So this is more of a roundtable format, but the point is this, okay? And I'm going to be very honest and very blunt about what motivated this panel. I'm an academic. A lot of people at the conference today are not academics. This is motivated by the intersection for me of my professional work as an academic, as an intellectual, whatever, and my personal politics, which are, I'll tell you what they are if you want to know, but I've never done this so nakedly in a public forum. I am a leftist. I consider myself a socialist. I come from very specific ideological traditions, and I have been pro-independence pretty much all my life with nuances. But I have become frustrated in the last few years with the crisis on the island, and especially now with the storm. And I think it's a frustration that I shared with enough people that I said, we shouldn't solve this alone, okay? If there is a solution, maybe there isn't, but we shouldn't discuss it alone or in fragments. With some of the rhetoric around responses to the crisis, okay? And some of it polemic, inevitably it's polemic, inevitably it's ideological, and inevitably it's strategic. And in the absence of political organizations today that are of the Puerto Rican diaspora, or of the American left, or of the island, right? 3 empty spaces with lots of little blips, but nothing really that, in my view, from what I observe, connects enough of us to help us solve these things together. Left-inflected academics, maybe that's not a critical piece here, but it's part of where I'm coming from, okay? Need to find the language, I think, that is more effective for our ideas, but also for the problems and the projects, like Puerto Rico's multiple concatenated crises, that we need to contribute to. Otherwise, we're useless. Okay, we can do research, yes, we educate people, yes, we work, whatever the hell we do within our academic institutions or within PRSA or whatever else we do. We can play a public intellectual role of bringing A and B together or highlighting publicly information that needs to be known. That's okay, that's what professors like to do, others as well, or connecting the academic world with the activist world, perhaps. But we are, again, this is the instinct that drove the creation of the panel, where some of us are constantly doing battle in public against bad historical ideas, unfounded historical ideas. To some of us, proven bad strategies and wrong history, ultra-left ideas, ultra-nationalist ideas, ideas that are conspiratorial about how to respond. And in the end, part of the intellectual in me is like, that's wrong, I need to fix it. The political subject in me is, that's not going to get us anywhere, right? What happened to the light? Blip it up, please. Otherwise people will fall asleep.
No.
Anyway, so we have 2 people here. That's basically the frame, and I know that we can't solve this. And personally, for example, just as a minor piece, I'm hosting, I've been organizing the hosting of the next PRSA conference, the big conference at Rutgers for next year, literally a year from today, from this week. And one of my solutions to this piece that I'm presenting to you is to host hopefully a 3-panel series of panels on the history and politics of the PSP, the Partido Socialista Puerto Rican, okay? And it's not for nostalgia, it's not for fetishism, it's not for whatever, all the bad stuff. It's to discuss their politics in relation to activism in the 70s in the island, their politics in relation to problems that are still not solved, not for infinite theoretical hair splitting, but to learn some lessons if they're there to be had, right? But at least to recover some of that history from people who are still around, right? And so that's one piece.
You actually have members of the PSP.
Yeah, I figured there would be some. And I know my dad was one of them. So, but, you know, part of it is as a historian, but part of it is also as the relevance for today of the 70s, in some ways. So whatever. So Harry and Zaire, my colleagues, who were part of the original list of this panel, can say a few things about how they perceive these things from within their take. I have observed my colleagues have different approaches, some who quietly withdraw from certain discussions and say, yo no me meto en eso, but here's what I'm gonna do. And others get into public fights very visibly, and whatever. And maybe we need these things to be out in the open and discussed both publicly, openly. We don't have political parties within which to do that. You know, if you think of the Sanderista movement, you know, what's the place of the Puerto Rican piece in there? I have no idea. I stayed aloof of that, right? Maybe some of you can talk about that. But within the Puerto Rican community, academics often have a presence of the word and the clarity, and also the privilege of time and education to speak. That's what we get paid to do. That's what we do for our students all the time. And we're missing an opportunity if so many professores and whatever, even grad students, can't think about this coherently together, right? So Harry and Zaire maybe can add something to this piece, perhaps from a very different perspective than I'm presenting, which is fine, right? Harry and then Zaire.
Okay, gracias, Aldo. I was having okay. All right. So, I may say a few controversial things because I really don't care about getting Facebook likes and whatnot. I really care about helping Puerto Rico. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions. How many of you would like Puerto Rico to become independent? There you go. Mine too. Mine too. How many of you have a lot of your relatives in Puerto Rico? I do. With the exception of my kids and my wife, all of my relatives, both sides, and most of the people that I care the most in the world, they're in Puerto Rico, trapped in that island, living this. I'm telling you this because I'm gonna say a few things that you're not gonna like. So keep this in mind. Have the best interest of Puerto Rico in mind, and because my people are there, and that's the place where I was born and raised, right? This is what I see the academic response so far, for the most part. It's like there's Puerto Ricans drowning and they say, hey, throw me that rope. And the academic response is, Monsanto made that road, but let me tell you about colonialism. And I'm like, meanwhile, Puerto Rico's drowning, and we have to stop this. So, I want Puerto Rico to be independent. Most people who know me know that, right? But I know it's not coming anytime soon. So, while we can be critical and we can ask for the colonization at the same time that we make sure that Puerto Rico receives what it deserves and more, right? We have to let go of these ideas of time, the response that Puerto Rico is going to get to gaining independence or gaining statehood. Which apparently now people in the U.S. know it's a U.S. territory, colony, and the Puerto Ricans are citizens, right? And the support for statehood has been growing. Now, let's disconnect like any response to Puerto Rico, any effort from a political solution. Because in the case of Puerto Rico, a political solution to the status may not even be the best approach to decolonization. So what I'm asking for is to actually engage in crafting a message that demand from Congress and from the White House, and whether we like it or not, Congress and the White House are the ones who are going to release most of the funding that is going to be needed to reconstruct Puerto Rico, right? It's not going to be a private enterprise. right? It's not gonna be the United Nations. It's not gonna be any other savior, right? And by the way, I just see a savior there. Congress and the White House, they're not our savior. Let's make that clear, right? Everything that Puerto Rico should get from federal funding is earned and well deserved, right? So to sum this up, these initial thoughts, we need to let go, as Aldo mentioned, of all these conspiracy theories, right? Since day one, I have been following what the military had been deploying to make sure that it's happening, and then going, if they say that they have the 372 field hospital set up, I look up where they're coming from at their Facebook page, and I see they're posting, and I've been corroborating things, and the military so far, not FEMA or the White House, right? They have been breaking their backs, right? But there's the, because of our colonial history, some people are worried that the effort is being militarized, right? And you see people, no, we don't want any more soldiers. And on the other hand, you have the other voice, we need more soldiers. Yes, they need more soldiers. Why? Because they have the training, they have the hardware. And keep in mind, those soldiers who are going to Puerto Rico, right? They're not simply US soldiers. A great number of them are Puerto Ricans, who are to this day the only Hispanic group overrepresented in the military, right? But the real soldiers that people were seeing were Puerto Rican National Guardsmen and from the Army Reserve, who have been deployed not just since Maria, but since Irma. Many of them, right? Many of them still haven't talked to their relatives after being deployed after Irma, right? So we need to let go of this idea, keep people honest, keep them honest, right? Let's demand clarity. Let's support the people who are on the ground, like, letting us know that it's more than about 50 people who have died, that is in the hundreds, right? Let's keep supporting that. But let's not make this.
900. The last meeting that I just
Yeah, right?
900.
More than 100, right?
900.
Of
More than
so-called
900.
natural causes, right?
Ballpark, right? So, let's do this. Whoever tries to make the issue, be it local in Puerto Rico, a political issue, to get reelected, elected as governor, tíralo al medio. Whoever from this side who wants to sandwich the Puerto Rican crisis in a fight between Republicans and Democrats, tíralo al medio. Don't let Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rican crisis, become a peon in this great scheme of politics, because it is happening right now. It is happening.
Okay, by the way, Zaire will have her word now, but the format, since there's so many people, I didn't expect that many, is you get 1 minute to reflect and contribute and discuss. 1 minute, that's it. Counting.
So I'll go quickly.
Zaire gets more than 1 minute.
I'm Zaire Dinzey-Flores, and I am also a colleague of Aldo's and professor at Rutgers. And I don't typically join these conversations on colonization and coloniality and all this stuff. I'm sort of agnostic on the issue, and it's not an agnosticism that started with the crisis. It's been my whole life. So I grew up in Puerto Rico. My parents are Dominican immigrants, so I bring that perspective to this thing. But I've always been agnostic about the political question, partly because of the Dominican thing, and I won't go into that, but which is real and important, but partly because I've always been concerned more on how people experience the island and how people live in questions of inequality, in questions of poverty, in questions of proper housing. And the political landscape in Puerto Rico has been overburdened, and I think we're gonna agree here, Harry, and I didn't expect to, probably coming from different places, but it has been overburdened by this question of, in my view, of colonization, coloniality, what's happened. And it didn't start with the crisis. From forever, the government has been doing nothing. So they have created this crisis. This crisis has been in the making. A hurricane contributed to it, but it has been in the making for forever. Nobody has been focusing on declining housing stock. Nobody has been focusing on where you build roads. Nobody has been focusing on fiscal planning, proper fiscal planning. So, I mean, and on and on and on and on and on. And I think that's the major crisis. And in our conversations, we've talked about, like, you know, what about like stopping the discussion of colonization, talking about inequality. Those are my, talking about, you know, this supposition that with independence, it's like, you know, everything will be great, all our problems will solve. Well, we know from, you know, examples the world over, the types of challenges that come with independence. And they're, you know, scholarly, practical approaches of the types of challenges that come. That if we, you know, kind of focus so much on that, and that focus on what happens, you know, independence or not, what happens? How are people governed? How does governing happen? How does social policy get enacted? How does urban planning get enacted? Then we've gone nowhere. Examples, and I'm like, we have to talk about the Caribbean here, because in Latin America and the rest of the quote unquote developing world, and the ways in which structural adjustment programs, they're republics, they're independent republics, but they're still, you know, messed up. Yeah. And so here, you know, I'm not suggesting that the question of independence is not one to be resolved. That's not what I am saying. What I am saying is that the focus, kind of like undivided attention to that, has left a bunch of problems to the side, which has resulted in this crisis. I'm not so like into the free for all, kind of like whatever happens now, like let them bring, you know, US wants to do this, let them bring, Whitefish will fix it, so let them fix it, you know, with their, I'm not there either. I think that part of the response to the hurricane has been sort of like patchwork. Oh, this happens here, that happens there, and don't criticize that, because no, I mean, I think that we have to focus on planning. I think that questions about kind of like, you know, who is overseeing this? What is the plan? Not the tomorrow plan, not the 2-day plan. What's the 30-day plan? What's the year plan? Those questions are not being asked. I think that that there is an incompetence there across the board, but it's basically because we have like been okay with leaders that kind of like align with our political status, you know, preference, and not with their capacity and their skills to lead. So I think that, you know, I just want to say, let's bring to the conversation questions of governance, about housing, of poverty, of safety net. They're like threatening with removing the safety net, of infrastructure, long-term, to the center of the conversation as well. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, so I guess for those who just got in, the goal here is to talk about how perhaps academics who are definitely left-inflected and probably support independence or at least anti-colonial politics, how do we participate without ending up ignoring that and hair-splitting over, you know, just, you know, my politics now or nothing, right? I guess in a sense that's the biggest framework for this discussion. So over here, and then over here, and one more, and then over here.
Yeah, I'm Ed Ortiz from Colón, and I'm an independentista. But here's the deal, I actually agree with a lot of stuff you said. Because you can't do like a plebiscite today and say, oh, we're gonna have independence, so everything's gonna get taken care of. But it's about changing the language of anti-colonial politics. Yes, we wanna find out what is the plan. What I wanna know is, what is the plan that doesn't involve selling off the real estate to corporations, because in 5 years, when things get better, they're coming in to buy. I want to know that part of the plan as well. So I don't want to like hair split, and I don't want to devote every part of the conversation to independence. But we know what's coming. So for us, we need to start, if not independence, say decolonization. at the very least, and how we're going to address those issues. Thank you.
Yo me cuestiono por qué tenemos que aceptar que somos un territorio de Estados Unidos. Eso es lo que ellos dicen. Nosotros no decimos eso. ¿Por qué debemos de aceptar que Puerto Rico, que Estados Unidos es el mainland de nosotros? Eso es una mentira. ¿Por qué tenemos que aceptar? Bueno, se me olvidó lo otro, pero okay, bueno. Oh, bien, ok, pues. Perdón, pero
My name is Walter Alomar. I'm the president of the Organization for Culture of Hispanic Origins and directed a film called Colonization is Extinction. It's about the economic crisis in Puerto Rico. We cannot abandon about the status of Puerto Rico because what's happening is we are rebuilding the island right now. I have been personally responsible for sending the third container next weekend to Puerto Rico to help out. We are rebuilding the island and they're going to come back and take it.
Exactly.
So we have to plan. Now we're sitting here, we're talking about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, right? This organization with that one and this one, everybody working together. They're going to let us fix the island because they're not doing anything for our people. Graves are coming up, people are dying. No one's doing anything about it. FEMA's holding everything that arrives in Puerto Rico. You can't send it to Rami Air Force Base. You have to send it somewhere else, to the south part of the island. We are fixing the island and then they're going to slowly come in and just say, okay, they're going to take it because we are a territory, we are a colony. So therefore we are their possessions. According to the Supreme Court, we belong to, but not a part of the United States.
Okay. 3 more. 1, 2, 3. By the way, I don't agree with any of that except the part about the containers. And that's why we're here. Okay? One. Yeah.
Yeah, at the former workshop that I was at, there was much talk about a Washington demonstration on the 19th. I think one of the things that we need to do now, in the interest of tabling those discussions that may be affecting what we need to do, I think what we need to do now is be visible, those of us that are here. Right? Now, it's not that easy to put together a significant demonstration of Puerto Ricans for the 19th in Washington unless we drop everything else. So if that is something that's to come out of this collection of people, then we need to commit to that because everything else is so long-term. Pero ahora tenemos que hacer sentir lo que estamos aquí y lo que estamos llegando, porque 3 gatos are not going to work.
Okay.
So just very briefly, like I hear, you're saying, Zaire, that there are struggles and challenges with independence, and so people are saying like it's not like a feasible conversation for right now. But the island's already facing so much challenges and so much difficulty. How are we going to be able to rebuild and plan under the confines of U.S. occupation and the bureaucracy? Because like nothing's happening because there's all this red tape. Right. So.
Okay, me ¿Por qué tenemos que aceptar que somos ciudadanos? La verdad es que no, verdaderamente no somos ciudadanos. Fuimos hechos ciudadanos a la fuerza y eso es ilegal. Ahora, eso de que somos ciudadanos, según oí decir, es una ciudadanía estatutaria, que la pueden quitar cuando ellos les dé la gana y cuando les convenga a ellos. Así es que ciudadanos no somos verdaderamente.
Okay, who's number 3? I'll take 3 more. 1, 2, and 3. Harry wanted to interject. He's got privilege. 10 seconds.
The Naturalization Act of 1940 makes your citizenship non-statutory. It cannot be revoked. It can be renounced. It can be revoked.
Okay.
1917, just one thing.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Cynthia, and I might be the minority here. I was born and raised here in Brooklyn, and I've always been like trying to get myself educated as far as the statehood and independence. But I always think of independence, can Puerto Rico survive? I mean, we don't even have a real military, you know, so you have to think about that. I agree with the lady right here too. And so I'm just trying to get educated on both sides, but why is statehood so bad? And you're gonna all beat me up later, but I'm gonna find out the research later. And I just think that, you know, we could also approach it from that aspect as well.
Okay, next. The next 1, 2, 3, yes.
So I was shocked because in the workshops that I just came from, it was also always about opening up the possibilities where we can go, opening up, not limiting. And then I walk into this workshop, which I thought was gonna be different, and they talk about let go of the idea of independence for political solutions so we can focus on this. No, I think the political solution is part of focusing on this problem. And the government hasn't done anything. Oh yeah, they've done exactly what the US government has wanted to do. Has let the nation fall apart, has made sure that people leave Puerto Rico. The government has been doing exactly what their masters has wanted them to do. And if we don't talk about independence and we don't solve the problem, next year another Maria will come and we'll be in the same place. So talking about independence, I think, should be a one priority.
These issues are not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
If we address it just from a short-term view, we will be in the same spot yet again. And so the importance is to hold both. To hold the importance of dealing with what we have to deal with right now and get those demands met in terms of the fiscal control board, the disaster relief, etc. But that's only the beginning. If you do not look at the opportunity to have self-determination where you can in fact be able to govern your island. We can't. We have hundreds of years of colonialism, all right? Systems that have exploitation of our natural resources, exploitation of our people, the diaspora, the brain drain, etc. How can we not see that those are the vestiges of colonialism and not blame, you know, a government that has been installed by that same U.S.
But also, can I jump in here because I think it's being misinterpreted what I said. I didn't say that we should not focus on the question of sovereignty. That's not what I said.
He said it.
Oh, well, no, and I don't think he said that either, but he can speak for himself. But I think it's important to really, to understand what the landscape is outside of this question of sovereignty. So today you have sovereignty. What happens tomorrow? Do you know what the state of the world is? All of Latin America is colonial. It suffers under the vestiges of colonialism. All of those islands, Caribbean, all of the Americas, are affected by colonialism.
So what is the alternative?
No,
Because what you're suggesting is...
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Then what are you saying? What is the alternative? I'm asking you to answer the question.
The alternative is to focus right now, because right now, okay, as I said, I'm agnostic about the question, because tomorrow, and yes, please, let's have sovereignty. And tomorrow what happens? You know what happens? You have to go to the IMF to find
That's
the
not
same.
agnostic. You're not being agnostic. You have a position, and you should be clear on your
Okay.
No,
position.
I'm not for statehood.
I have a political question as an answer to all of this.
I'm not, and don't.
How do you
put
convince
statehood on
liberal
me.
Americans who will support our reconstruction? With what language do we get 10,
Yes.
20, 30, 40, 50 million allies to support what we want to do for the island? Have the answers been mentioned here?
No.
How do we get half of Puerto Rico to support any of these solutions that have been answered here? I think we already know what the answer to that is. So, the reason why the word language is in the title of the panel is because I don't hear too many solutions concretely, right? How do we build movements, allies, parties, positions, solutions that don't rehash and repeat the same dead-end, painted into the corner ideological positions? Okay, 3 and then 3 more. 1, 2, and 3. Go right ahead.
Okay, so quickly, I'm a psych major, so I think that will frame everything here. So as a psych major, you kind of have to engage in a conversation in a way that you have to be empathetic to the other person and constantly validate them. You know, so a person of privilege, so for example here, as colonial as society is, white America is essentially the privileged person in the situation. So in order for white America to even help Puerto Rico or even get our message and get allies, we need to be able to, you know, express it in a way, express the situation in a way that they can understand it, you know? So put it in their perspective and explain it to them how your situation, so our situation, como tal, is going to, like, how that will be for them. Like, I think that's like the best way possible for our situation.
I was born right after you. I think this gentleman has been waiting.
Who's, no, we're calling on the numbers, the hands that I saw.
missed him. He was one of the numbers.
Did I raise your hand? Did I
You
get
raised
you?
his number, you
Andy?
told him 3, I think, and he never got a
Just
chance.
put me on the list eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, number one.
I'm number 1. What I've noticed is here, and I think that moving forward, if we don't have respect for one another's opinion, we're going to still have this tit for tat and nothing is going to get done. So in the interest of bringing peace here, she has a different opinion from you and you have a different opinion from her, and that is okay.
Yep.
And that's kind of the message that I want to send. She's saying statehood, I'm saying independence, but I have to respect.
I'm learning, I'm trying to learn.
Right, but I'm just saying that I have to respect your position.
Yeah,
I might not like it, but I have to understand. So in other words, in order for conversations to actually start, we have to go in there with a thinking of, I'm going to respect your opinion, regardless if I like it or not. And I'm going to try and understand it too.
Okay, the PPD in Puerto Rico, the left-wing working class alternative with only 10,000 voters. They don't have a position on the status. They have a position on the social issues and the class basis of any solution. So that could be represented here, but by coincidence it isn't, right? Okay, next person. Yes, go right ahead.
So let me start by saying I agree strongly with Harry. Independence has never had more than 10% of the vote in Puerto Rico. We don't count, it's their vote. They've never had more than 10%, so now's not the time. As far as language, if you want to appeal to the left wing and the liberals here, you look at them, you speak about it as a humanist, humanitarian crisis that's going to take years to resolve. And the people here who are on the left, they're our citizens. So you speak to them as fellow citizens who need your help.
Okay, next person.
No.
Yes, go right ahead.
No, I just want to follow up on what he suggested. He's saying something that's very specific. We can all do something, and that is that we bring up just those 3 issues: the imposition of citizenship, second-class citizenship, the fact that that this is not the mainland, and that Puerto Rico is separate or somehow connected. The Supreme Court already said Puerto Rico belongs to, but is not part of the United States. Part of the solution is just to edify the American people, write letters, write to the editors. There's all kinds of publications who are willing to accept your letters. But if we don't say it, the media, NBC, will tell our story. You want to tell the story? Just write. No one here is un alfabeto, right? We're all literate people. We can all write letters. There are county newspapers, citywide newspapers, national newspapers. Take time to write. And if we can convey the message, get a hold of those microphones and explain, we don't perceive the United States to be the mainland. We are the mainland.
Okay.
Vieques is in relationship to we are the mainland to Vieques.
Okay. Andy, but 1 second, I'll take 3 more. 3 more? Nobody wants to speak? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the right side of the room has it. Andy.
So, I support what's been said. We need to relax. If we are going to think coldly and strategically, this is the very, very beginning of a long haul of us thinking intellectually, strategically, with as little emotion, and that sounds cold, with as little emotion as we Boricuas are accustomed to. We don't deal with this. Some additional tidbits.
part of the narrative, again, how to change the narrative and to educate the North American population, we gotta hammer away at this point that I hear every night, okay, on even progressive stations. Puerto Ricans who are Americans, Puerto Ricans who are part of America, no, we're not part of America. That's part of the learning that America has to understand and embrace before we can see ourselves as equals, right? Final tidbit. Is there a force on the statehood side, which is what makes me skeptical about this, that is symmetrically arguing for the statehooders to drop the statehood question, the status? Because if they're not making a similar effort, why are we negotiating with ourselves?
Editorial comment. That is irrelevant because half the people support statehood. How are you going to address that?
We can continue that.
I'm the insider here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Well, no, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, what I wanted to say is, I'm new to this where I would say asleep, right? And I didn't know what was going on in my own, where I came from, where I was born. And now when I started to learn, I started seeing, I want independence, right? But then I'm noticing that when we start talking about it, we become so emotional about it, and we start attacking that nobody wants to listen. So I'm thinking the delivery of the message is extremely important, because if we don't deliver the message and we shut people down, nobody's gonna listen. And if nobody listens, change is not going to take place.
Next person. Number 2.
I'm hearing a lot of people having so many different opinions, and I really liked what the man said in the corner there about gathering stories, and I feel like, and also about having communication with a lot of people that disagree on a lot of different things and have a lot of respect. I have this idea that we could just what if everybody in here just wrote down exactly what they need, what they something really specific, really close that is capable, and we just put it in a bucket, and then one person just looks through all of this stuff and writes those ideas down and starts formulating something, because I feel like that's what we need to do.
Okay, next person. Sorry.
So I
Name,
think,
address up here. 3.
Yes,
Who was 3?
that's
Yes,
me, Aldo. So I think, just two things, and I'm gonna try to make these points very quickly. One, I think, one of the ground rules for today was that the status issue could not be discussed really. Yes. And I think that, okay, we don't want to take a political position, whatever, but what happens in that case then is that analysis of colonialism gets constrained, right? So how do we deal with that problem? Because in panels that I was in, people were like, oh, well, we can't talk about that because that's related to the status. So how do we deal with colonization, even if we don't want to get into these party politics? My suggestion for that, my second point, is that maybe one of the ways for us to think about this is outside perhaps of traditional political models that we've been using in the context of Puerto Rico. And so, which is not to abandon independence, not to abandon statehood, but I would say, I think a helpful model for us to think about, maybe borrow from, is actually the prison abolitionist model, which is how do you work towards immediate concerns of alleviating particular problems, but not dropping the long-term goal of independence or of decolonization, of sovereignty, whatever kind of terminology we want to use for it. So how can we get out of, oh, the model is PSP, the model is BEEP, whatever, and look at something different.
Very interesting. Very interesting suggestion. And most people don't agree with all of us in this room, which is a dilemma that makes us have to think about exactly Black Lives Matter and this kind of model as the ultimate goal, whatever. We'll focus on this goal right now, right? And we probably don't agree about the ultimate goal. Was there a 3? No. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and then 3. New people.
Okay,
Go right ahead.
I agree with some of the things you said. And one model that we used recently, and most of us were probably involved, is Oscar Lopez Rivera, how we got his liberty. We never stopped talking about independence for Puerto Rico or decolonizing Puerto Rico, and yet we were able to build a movement that involved everybody. So I want you to see that even within our communities, we do have models that we can follow. The other thing is that I insist that we make this about opening more possibilities instead of closing possibilities. And the third is that 3 of us here just came from Cuba about 2 weeks ago, and we saw models there that were also very helpful. Models about how they're doing their agriculture, models about how they responded after after the Soviet Union fell apart, and they were left in similar situations to what Puerto Rico is facing now. So I think that we can don't have to look to the Latin America that's not working, but we could look to one Latin American country that is working. Yes. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah. Were you next?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Wait, you spoke already.
Yeah,
well, you chose me,
Okay.
so does she.
Sorry.
I'll be quick. So, no, I want to say that this like small conflict is perfect because it reflects what's out there out in the world. Like the fact that there's not agreement and there will be arguments but here, you know, we have this privilege of being able to resolve that conflict and choosing empowering language where we can find common language with different perspectives. So, you know, yeah, we have different opinions on the end goal, but what are the commonalities and how can we bring people together so that we can have results, so that we can have positive change. And I love that you mentioned Cuba, because that's I always, you know, was thinking about that. Maybe we should be looking towards Cuba. And agriculture, the land. That is one thing that everyone can agree on because it's our food, it's our
Who's
mother.
we and who's listening? Who's they?
Yeah.
Oh, they do this to us.
May I
I'm just saying, language matters, just like many of you have said. Okay, next person. Next person.
I have relatives in Puerto Rico on 3 sides of the issue. You know, being independent, being statehood, and status quo. And I'll support my relatives as much as I can. I know, having been born on the island, have been raised here, I'm not going to go back to live in Puerto Rico. So I am a supporter. I am an ally in this discussion. What I do know is that my hometown, Joyuda in Cabo Rojo, has been destroyed. And what I want is to create my own personal plan where I can say, short term, le mando dinero, le hago esto lo otro. Medium term, figure out how I can volunteer. And long term, figure out how to help the island turn around. And we don't have that much time, people. You know, so if we continue discussing, you know, should we continue with this and with that, we're losing sight of long term, which is really important. Gracias.
Okay, 3 more. Harry gets it 1 second in between. 1,
Harry's getting shorter and shorter.
2, new people. 3, Harry first.
I only wanted to say that I've been to Cuba too, right? If you bring from here the topic of Cuba into Puerto Rican politics, independence gets crushed. The worst argument that you could ever make in Puerto Rico for independence is Cuba, because you're gonna get crushed. And we have to stop dealing with ideology and pajaritos preñados and face their reality. So you need to understand who you're talking to and know what you want to happen. This is why we always get crushed.
Okay, next person. 1, 2, 3. Who was 1? 1.
Most of my colleagues have not been Latino. And just by saying Puerto Rico has this law, or Puerto Rico has that restriction, without ever mentioning politics of any kind, you'll find that colleagues and friends will say to you, but that's crazy, that means they have no identity. But that's crazy, that means that they're not really a citizen. And to me, they're wanting to do language. Is language about making people understand? It doesn't mean you lose your idea about independence or statehood or whatever your position is. You really don't have to use those words if what you want to explain is the terrible position that Puerto Rico's in because of laws, because of restrictions, because of blah, 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 you can pick reams of things to explain so that we can move, whether it's in education or whether it's in let's plant again in the country, and we get them somewhat on their feet and then go back to your positions, whatever your positions are. Because every time you discuss your position, we stop.
Next. Two? Who was two?
No.
No,
person, but I'll do it again.
Okay, we go to three.
I just want to say to him that only 2 of the 3 political parties in Puerto Rico voted, because the other 2 parties, they boycotted the
No, I'm talking
election.
since the 60s, there've been more than one
Oh, in
referendum.
60s you're saying, but not the recent
Every-
one?
I'm
Not
talking
the
about
recent
every
one.
single referendum, they've never got more than 10%.
No debating.
Those numbers
Get your-
are
get your piece.
arguable because
Okay.
of the fact that people are not, they don't believe in the system and they have not voted. 2 of the
Exactly.
3 parties did not vote. So how can you say that 90% wanted
That is not
to be statehood when only 22% of the island voted?
Voted, that's right.
And for him, I still have time.
Yes,
And
you
for
do.
him, and for you, sir, and we just came back from Cuba, they have systems that do work, and that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. When they had electricity up in 1 week.
I just came back from Cuba
It's
too.
a shame that it's gonna take our people 6 to 8 months, when they had it up in 1 week. And we helped out with the people in
My neighborhood
Cuba.
didn't have power.
The point is the language.
Okay.
90%.
Remember that we're not necessarily debating the truth about Cuba.
Right,
We're
it's the
debating how the
language.
hell do we build some stuff in here where Cuba might be useful to us, maybe it isn't. Maybe we refer to it with a different language, in a non-ideological framing. I don't know. I know that it's clear from listening to all of you that we have a hell of a learning curve ahead of us. To get past simplistic, simple-minded, and even wrong. I hear a lot of wrong stuff, empirically wrong stuff.
Such as?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, bring it
okay,
on.
no,
Yeah.
later. That's how, okay, so need 3 more people.
Okay.
One, new people. You had your hand up. You were number 2. 2. 3.
Can you talk again, please? We should have
As soon as we're done with the people who have not talked. Yes, 3. Well, wait, you're 3. So who is 1?
Not 1.
Oh, you're 1, okay. I'm telling you. So you get 2 turns.
I wanted to mention something, because we're here today because of what happened to Puerto Rico. We would have had a symposium where it's concentrating on the disaster we have. Regardless of where we go, my real big concern is, I don't want my isla to be extinct. I don't want extinction, regardless of we do statehood, regardless of we do independence. Right now, the fear is, if you say not to lose your identity, well, Hawaii lost a lot. So my thing is, I do not want extinction. So how do we come together and decide what we're gonna do without losing the extinction of our people?
Okay, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm gonna try to be brief. My name's Enrique. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, 26 years, recently moved here. My experience with this status issue is not gonna get resolved with a group of people in one room in one afternoon. Statehood or independence, we both have different definitions of what that means. You'll mostly even find the content of what that political status means between a statehood and an independence can mean the same thing. So it doesn't have to be that actual division between us. Now, the issue of this gathering right here is not to define the future status of Puerto Rico, but to find common action goals about how to help our family members and our friends who are suffering right now, and not argue with each other and bicker about ideological whatever. Now, before that, on the topic at hand is how to change the narrative and the visual representation of Puerto Rico and anti-decolonization, whatever that may mean. And for that, to finish up, is 3 points about how do we define anti-colonization in the broadest terms. Who do we want to aim that message towards? Yes, the North Americans, but who is that? Like the government, local or federal, the media, who is the media? That's a broad term too. And also, what is the content? What is the unifying narrative? And what are you asking for? We need action, people, not stupid debates.
And how do we frame anti-colonial politics to include all the critical social questions that Zaire talked about? Okay, did we have numbers pending? Okay, 3 more. 1 new person.
Oh, wait, you had me.
Repeat.
I'll give my
Hands up.
name.
Repeat. Okay, stake your claim. Okay, so who's number 1? Go right ahead.
I just have a question. You know, we're here together talking about Puerto Rico. Meanwhile, there is a serious exodus of Puerto Rico. So we're talking about protecting, keeping an island where people are leaving because of desperation. So I would like to hear a plan whereby we can rebuild Puerto Rico, keep Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, and not allow the vultures who are circling the island to come in and decide they're gonna rebuild it, because this slowdown with not giving us the money is because they have their eyes on the prize. And they don't call it the rich port for nothing.
Yeah.
So that's my concern right now. What are we gonna do here to help build Puerto Rico?
And how can we get stateside Puerto Ricans to the island?
Thank you.
And
Yep.
invest?
Okay.
That's important.
Who was next?
She was a repeat.
The worst vultures are already on the island, and they're our cousins. Go right ahead.
I just, there was talk of a plan. At one of the workshops that I was in, there was a Marshall Plan. And I think that if we focus what we're saying, what we more or less have a consensus on, and put those points in that Marshall Plan, it gives us something to launch as the product. And I would also say, please include renewable energy, not rehashing the same old problem.
That's not.
Vultures? 3. Who was 3? You were 3. Go right ahead.
Bueno, esto lo voy a decir en inglés. Okay. Como dice las Naciones Unidas, elections held under military occupation and colonization are null and void. En otras palabras, esas elecciones en Puerto Rico no valen nada. Así que ese 10% y todo eso es todo eso es basura, ¿entiendes? Que no cuenta, porque estamos bajo el coloniaje, tenemos el cerebro lavado, y para tú poder decir una cosa libremente y decidir por Puerto Rico libremente, tienes que ser primero libre.
That has not gotten us very far, even if it's true. I'm just saying. I'm not even giving you my opinion. So number 1.
Number 2 right there.
Number 2. What? Did I silence you already? 2. Hold on. 2.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, 1.
You're saying no debating, but then I see you shooting down.
Exactly.
Yo estoy aquí para prenderle fuego a esta pendejada con las limitaciones que veo. I'm telling you, we have heard a lot of this before. Right? No, hay emoción. We've heard a lot of this before. Our need is to get beyond the stuff that will work.
Then you need to posit the conversation in that manner and not throw us under the bus.
Did I throw it?
Oh, come on, man. You
I disagree with almost everybody.
and start being up on independent.
We need to respect the elderly man that's here.
You want to change the conversation,
What
but you
did I
don't
say?
change the
Did I
conversation.
disagree with him? Okay. Who's next? Did you want to? Okay.
Trying to circle back to the topic of language. From my observation, it seems the one word that has galvanized the greatest amount of support toward the people in the island is the word citizen, because half of the country, the United States, didn't even know we were citizens. And it wasn't until they got educated that, yes, we are actually citizens, that there was an uproar that said, how can we possibly treat fellow citizens in this manner? So to address getting the immediate need met, you discuss it as these are fellow citizens that deserve this aid, and then after the immediate crisis is over, then you change over to a different topic.
Okay. Number next person and number over there. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We all got great ideas, some of us, about what to do for Puerto Rico. Renewable energy, wind, solar, hydro, absolutely, great ideas. The only problem is, we're not in any position to dictate that policy as long as we are a colony. So that has to change. We could come up with great ideas and send them down the line. But what's gonna happen? Nothing. They fall on deaf ears because it's up to Congress to decide if they're gonna set us free or not. So until that happens, right, we have no representation in Congress. So until that happens, all the great ideas, everything, all the plans that we can put together, how it's gonna organize, how it's gonna work, we'll hit a brick wall because they still govern us.
And they're gonna do whatever.
So as long until that ends, exactly. We have to come together as a collective and take it to Congress and present to them, a closed mouth does not beat. You have to be vocal. You have to come forward and let them know that you will not stand for this any longer.
That's right.
Okay. Who was the next person? There was another person, yes.
Professor, I would like to hear your ideas about this. Take 3 minutes.
No. I'd rather have the time for the discussion.
Well, we can't do
This is just the first one. Believe me, this is just the first one. Okay? Okay, so Harry, and then anybody else?
You.
Ya no tenemos number
I
two.
find that there's too much arousal here. I came here to hear some new ideas as to how we begin to mobilize in a direction that makes sense immediately following the immediate crisis, and long term, maybe it'll be another 100 years of colonization. I don't know, I wish not. Okay, but this country is never, ever gonna let go of Puerto Rico. It's not.
If we think that way.
Written and will be rewritten, so how do we improve our lives, hold on to our identity, and help our fellow brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico?
Okay, Harry, and then over
I
here.
want to say a couple things. It has to do with the identity. The diaspora is the worst place to talk about losing the identity, because most part of New York are more, it's like being to Puerto Rico in the 1950s. We know how to keep our culture, right? Citizenship is only, and I'm gonna say this in this case, citizenship is only your legal relation within the state in which this case happens, that we live within an empire, right? But that citizenship denies some right to the people who live in the island and gives some rights to the people who live here. So don't say that you don't have a voice, because our brothers and sisters, they don't have a voice, but every single Puerto Rican who lives in the United States has a voice. Do not silence your own voice, because Puerto Rico needs it now. Even if it's inconvenient to you to understand, well, I'm an American citizen, I may not like it, but use that power. Because if you don't use it, you're stopping yourself from using that power from a position of privilege. And our cousins in the island, they don't have that privilege now.
Okay. Yes.
So summing up what's been said to some extent by some here already, but is it possible that we can do both and as opposed to an either or, and tarry with the negative, with the contradictions, while not losing sight, if I'm hearing Zaire and Harry correctly, of foregrounding the concrete socioeconomic realities of the people on the island, attending to that while also attending to these other dynamics that are at work? So can we do both and tarry with our contradictions and differences while we foreground these very concrete realities? One. Number two, I think I share in some of your agnosticism regarding the language of colonialism, and in part it's due to the fact that even statehooders are now using this language of coloniality. So that makes me suspicious. And thirdly, with regards to language, I think, again, some of what's been said before, the language of citizenship, of freedom. This is language that the U.S. is familiar with, relishes, and telling a different narrative using the kinds of categories that resonate within the context of the U.S., and as citizens pushing for policy analysis that will affect policy in Puerto Rico.
Okay, we have time for 2 more interventions. I already had one. I'll take another person who has not spoken yet, preferably. Yes, senor in the back and over here. Okay, so one.
Okay, so I want to reiterate your point that, like, you know, we kind of have to like stop talking politics and more like focus on real world situations, and like kind of like change the way we talk about it, which is really the point of this entire talk. And you also just said everything I said, so I have no words now.
That's a good thing. Okay, and you give up some of your time anyway. Number 2. Yes.
My name is Ismael Betancourt, and I think we're missing a point here. We're talking the diaspora and the Puerto Ricans there. I think we need someone to unite the Puerto Ricans here and the Puerto Ricans there in unity. And one of the things I think we should do that it could be practical is to start a campaign to get us citizens to vote in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
All right, so we can take action in Puerto Rico in terms of changing the government or whatever structures go there, because we don't have that right now.
Number three, right here.
I think that what happens, because we are Latinos and we're Puerto Rican, as well as Dominicans and Cubans, we're all very emotional people, so this type of discussion can get very emotional. And sometimes we listen to respond, but don't listen to try to understand what the position is. Because I'm a New York born Puerto Rican from the Bronx, and I still can't understand the difference between statehood and independence and where we are now. And that's something I really wanna, understand.
And those of us who think we have a lot to say really should be hearing to the people that are saying, we don't know what to think. Because actually they're reflecting overwhelmingly the center of gravity of our people in both areas, here and there, right? We're going to follow through on these things. I think we really are out of time because we have to allow you a break. We're going to follow through on other of these forums, okay? Write to me, my email is here. It's aldo.lauria@gmail. And we have PRSA conference at Rutgers in a year, where we'll have a space for this sort of discussion, okay? Thank you. Thank you all.